April 18, 1943. The sun had barely risen over the Solomon Islands. High above the Pacific Ocean, 16 American P-38 Lightning fighters flew in complete radio silence. Their pilots weren't searching for an enemy fleet. They weren't escorting bombers. They weren't protecting troops. They were hunting. One man. Not just any man. The most important military commander in Japan. The architect of Pearl Harbor. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. But here's the mystery. Yamamoto's flight was supposed to be one of the best-kept secrets in the Japanese Empire. Only a handful of trusted officers knew where he would be, exactly when he would take off, exactly which route he would fly, and exactly what time he would arrive. Yet somehow, American fighters appeared at the precise minute, at the exact altitude, in the middle of thousands of square miles of Pacific Ocean. The interception was so perfect. Many Japanese officers refused to believe it was possible. Some suspected there was a spy inside Japan's highest military headquarters. Others feared betrayal among their own officers. Some even believed supernatural luck had favored America. But the real answer was even more unbelievable. Because the United States wasn't following Yamamoto. It was reading Japan's most secret military communications. This is the incredible story of Operation Vengeance. The mission that proved, sometimes the deadliest weapon in war, is information. Chapter 1: The man Japan trusted most. Before we understand why America risked everything to eliminate one man, we first need to understand who he really was. To many Americans, Isoroku Yamamoto is remembered as the mastermind behind Pearl Harbor. But inside Japan, he was something far more complicated. He wasn't born into royalty. He wasn't raised in wealth. Born in 1884, Yamamoto grew up in a nation transforming at breathtaking speed. Only decades earlier, Japan had been largely isolated from the world. Now it wanted to compete with the greatest powers on Earth. Young Yamamoto chose the Imperial Japanese Navy. From the very beginning, he stood out. Not because he shouted the loudest, but because he thought differently. Unlike many officers of his generation, Yamamoto believed technology would determine the future of warfare. He embraced innovation. He studied foreign navies. He paid close attention to America's growing industrial strength. His curiosity eventually brought him to the United States, and what he saw there would shape his entire military career. He attended Harvard University. He traveled across America. He visited factories, shipyards, oil facilities, and massive industrial cities. He saw something few Japanese leaders truly understood. America's greatest weapon wasn't its army. It wasn't its navy. It was its economy. Factories stretched for miles. Steel poured from giant mills. Automobile plants produced thousands of vehicles every day. Oil flowed almost endlessly. Yamamoto realized one terrifying truth. If Japan ever entered a long war with the United States, Japan would almost certainly lose. Years later, he reportedly warned Japanese leaders, "I can run wild for 6 months or perhaps a year. After that, I have no confidence." History would prove those words remarkably accurate. Ironically, the man who understood America better than almost anyone in Japan would eventually become the face of Japan's attack against it. A brilliant strategist, by the late 1930s, Yamamoto had become one of Japan's most respected naval commanders. He challenged traditional thinking. Many admirals still believed giant battleships would dominate future wars. Yamamoto disagreed. He believed aircraft carriers were the future. At the time, many officers thought carriers merely supported battleships. Yamamoto believed the opposite. Aircraft could strike hundreds of miles away. Battleships could not. His ideas revolutionized Japanese naval planning. Under his leadership, Japan built one of the world's most skilled carrier forces. Pilots trained relentlessly. Carrier crews perfected coordinated attacks. Navigation improved. Bombing accuracy increased. Every exercise prepared Japan for a future conflict that many hoped would never come. Yet Yamamoto privately opposed war with America. He understood its risks. He knew Japan lacked sufficient oil. He knew America's factories could replace ships faster than Japan could sink them. He knew the math, and the math favored America. But when Japan's political leaders chose war, Yamamoto accepted his duty. If conflict was inevitable, he believed Japan's only chance was to strike first. Strike hard. Strike fast. Destroy America's Pacific Fleet before it could respond. That plan would become one of history's most famous military operations, Pearl Harbor. December 7, 1941. Across Hawaii, the morning appeared peaceful. American sailors prepared breakfast. Some attended church. Others slept after late-night duties. The radar operators noticed aircraft approaching. No one imagined what was coming. Within minutes, Japanese carrier aircraft filled the skies. Bombs exploded across Pearl Harbor. Battleships burned. Airfields were devastated. Thousands of Americans were killed. The attack shocked the United States. Across Japan, many celebrated. The operation appeared flawless. Yamamoto had delivered one of history's greatest surprise attacks. But despite its tactical success, something important was missing. America's aircraft carriers. They weren't in port. By chance. They had been away on separate missions. Those carriers would survive. And within months, they would begin turning the tide of the Pacific War. Yamamoto understood immediately that the victory was incomplete. America had been wounded. Not defeated. The clock starts ticking. Following Pearl Harbor, America responded with astonishing speed. Factories shifted to wartime production. Shipyards expanded around the clock. Aircraft production exploded. Young men enlisted by the millions. The nation united. Exactly as Yamamoto had feared. The industrial giant had awakened. Within months, new aircraft rolled off assembly lines daily. New ships entered service. Pilots trained in enormous numbers. American production soon exceeded anything Japan could match. Every month, the balance of power slowly shifted. Yamamoto knew time was running out. Japan needed another decisive victory. One that would crush American morale, destroy remaining carriers, and force the United States into negotiations. Instead, events would begin moving in the opposite direction. Chapter 2: America's Invisible Army. Most people imagine World War II being won by soldiers, sailors, pilots, and Marines. But hidden behind locked doors, another battle was taking place. No guns, no bombs, no fighter planes, only paper, pencils, typewriters, mathematics, and minds brilliant enough to solve impossible puzzles. America had assembled an invisible army, codebreakers. While Japanese warships crossed the Pacific, thousands of miles away, men and women worked in complete secrecy. Their mission wasn't to sink enemy ships. It was to read enemy thoughts. Every military message Japan transmitted was encrypted. To ordinary listeners, the radio signals sounded meaningless. Random groups of letters. Endless numbers. Worthless static. But American cryptanalysts believed something extraordinary. Every code could eventually be broken. They succeeded. America wouldn't simply know where Japanese forces had been. It would know where they were going. Before they even arrived, this hidden war would become one of the greatest intelligence battles in history. And eventually, it would lead directly to Admiral Yamamoto. Chapter 3: The Secret War Nobody Could See. While American Marines fought on jungle islands, and Navy ships exchanged gunfire across the Pacific, a different kind of battlefield existed thousands of miles away. There were no explosions, no fighter planes, no medals awarded in public, only locked doors, dimly lit rooms, stacks of intercepted radio messages, and teams of brilliant mathematicians, linguists, engineers, and cryptanalysts racing against time. They weren't trying to destroy Japan's navy. They were trying to understand it. Every day, Japanese military operators transmitted thousands of encrypted messages, orders, supply reports, fleet movements, reconnaissance updates, personnel transfers, flight schedules. Each transmission traveled invisibly through the air. Japanese commanders believed these messages were completely secure. After all, they were protected by one of the world's most sophisticated naval codes, a system known today as JN-25. To Japanese officers, it was practically unbreakable. To American codebreakers, it was simply another puzzle, breaking an impossible code. Imagine opening a book where every word has been replaced by a random 5-digit number. Now imagine that before those numbers are transmitted, someone changes them again using another secret mathematical table. That was essentially how JN-25 worked. Even if an enemy intercepted every radio message, the contents would appear meaningless, unless they possessed both the code book and the additional cipher tables. The information remained locked away. Japan regularly updated these systems. Whenever commanders suspected enemy intelligence was making progress, they introduced new versions. Each update forced Allied cryptanalysts to begin again. Weeks of work could disappear overnight. But the Americans refused to quit. Inside secure intelligence centers such as Station HYPO in Hawaii and other Allied code-breaking facilities, Experts spent endless hours searching for tiny patterns. One repeated number. One familiar phrase. One predictable report. Slowly, painfully, the impossible became possible. Each solved fragment unlocked another. Every breakthrough revealed another piece of Japan's military machine. It wasn't perfect. Many messages remained unreadable. Others arrived too late to matter. But enough information emerged to paint an increasingly clear picture of Japanese operations. The invisible war was beginning to favor America. A quiet genius named Joseph Rockefeller. Among the leaders of this secret effort stood one remarkable officer, Commander Joseph Rockefeller. Unlike the stereotypical military commander, Rockefeller often worked long hours wearing slippers instead of polished shoes. He slept in his office, rarely cared about appearances, and focused almost entirely on solving the next encrypted message. His brilliance wasn't flashy. It was relentless. He understood that intelligence wasn't about certainty. It was about probabilities. One intercepted message meant little. Hundreds of messages, compared over weeks, could reveal entire operations. Rockefeller's team became exceptionally skilled at connecting tiny clues into massive conclusions. That talent would soon change history. Midway, the first great test. In early 1942, American intelligence noticed an unusual pattern. Japanese naval communications repeatedly mentioned a mysterious objective identified only as AF. No one knew exactly what AF meant. Some officers believed it referred to Hawaii. Others suggested Alaska. Still others argued it could be somewhere entirely different. Without certainty, the U.S. Navy couldn't risk deploying its precious aircraft carriers. Rockefeller proposed an ingenious solution. The American base at Midway Island would transmit an unencrypted radio message claiming its freshwater system had failed. The message wasn't secret. Japan would almost certainly hear it. Sure enough, not long afterward, American codebreakers intercepted a Japanese encrypted message reporting that AF is short of water. The mystery was solved. Was Midway. Japan's next major target had been identified. The battle that changed the Pacific. Armed with this knowledge, Admiral Chester Nimitz made a bold decision. Instead of reacting after Japan attacked, he would wait in ambush. American aircraft carriers secretly positioned themselves northeast of Midway. The Japanese fleet had no idea they were there. On June 4, 1942, the battle began. Within hours, American dive bombers struck 3 Japanese carriers while their flight decks were crowded with fueled aircraft. Massive explosions erupted. A 4th carrier was destroyed. 4 of Japan's elite fleet carriers, gone. Many of Japan's most experienced naval aviators, lost forever. The victory shocked the world. For the first time, Japan had suffered a catastrophic naval defeat. But very few Americans knew the full story. Officially, the victory appeared to result from superior tactics. In reality, it began weeks earlier, inside a code-breaking office. The success at Midway proved something extraordinary. Signals intelligence could change the outcome of entire wars. Chapter 4: The message that should never have been read. Following Midway, Japan became increasingly cautious. Its navy still possessed enormous strength, but commanders knew the balance of power was shifting. Meanwhile, Admiral Yamamoto continued traveling across the Pacific. He believed personal leadership inspired confidence. He frequently visited forward bases. He inspected airfields, met with commanders, boosted morale. The Japanese people admired him. Sailors respected him. Pilots viewed him as the symbol of Japan's naval power. His visits were carefully organized. Security was strict. Flight schedules remained highly confidential. Only essential personnel received the details. No one imagined those plans were already being monitored. April 1943. In mid-April, Japanese headquarters prepared an inspection tour for Admiral Yamamoto. The schedule appeared routine. He would visit several bases in the Solomon Islands, meet local commanders, inspect aircraft, encourage troops. The itinerary included everything: departure airport, exact takeoff time, flight path, escort aircraft, arrival times, even the minute-by-minute schedule. It was transmitted through Japan's encrypted naval communication network. To Japanese planners, the message was perfectly safe. After all, who could possibly read it? Thousands of miles away, American listening stations intercepted the transmission. It joined countless others arriving each day. Normally, it might have seemed unremarkable, but codebreakers began decoding it, line by line, number by number. Slowly, the unbelievable emerged. They weren't reading an ordinary logistics report. They were reading Admiral Yamamoto's personal travel schedule. Every detail, every stop, every minute. The discovery. Inside the intelligence center, analysts checked the translation repeatedly. Could it really be accurate? Was it a deception? Had they misunderstood the message? The evidence became overwhelming. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't guesswork. This was Yamamoto's actual itinerary. The implications were staggering. For the first time, America knew exactly where Japan's most important military leader would be. Not approximately. Exactly. His departure time. His route. His estimated arrival. His altitude. His escort strength. It was an intelligence opportunity unlike anything seen before. The decoded message quickly moved up the chain of command. Senior officers realized they faced an extraordinary decision. Should they act? Or should they protect the secret? A dangerous choice. If American fighters intercepted Yamamoto exactly where the decoded message predicted, Japanese commanders might realize their communications had been compromised. That realization could be disastrous. Japan would change its codes. Months of painstaking intelligence work could vanish overnight. Future victories might become impossible. On the other hand, allowing Yamamoto to live meant passing up the chance to eliminate the architect of Pearl Harbor. It was one of the most difficult intelligence decisions of World War II. Military leaders debated the risks. Some argued protecting the code-breaking secret mattered more. Others believed opportunities like this never came twice. Eventually, the decision reached the highest levels of American command. And once approval was granted, a remarkable mission began taking shape. One that demanded extraordinary flying, perfect navigation, and absolute precision. The operation would receive a fitting name. Operation Vengeance. Chapter 5 Operation Vengeance. Once Admiral Yamamoto's itinerary had been decrypted, the United States faced one of the boldest decisions of the Pacific War. Should they risk exposing one of their greatest intelligence secrets to eliminate the man who had planned Pearl Harbor? Military leaders debated the question intensely. If Japan discovered that America had read its encrypted communications, it could immediately replace its naval code. Months, perhaps years, of painstaking intelligence work would be lost. The advantage that had helped America win at Midway could disappear overnight. But there was another side to the argument. Yamamoto wasn't just another admiral. He was Japan's most respected naval commander. His leadership inspired confidence throughout the Imperial Navy. Many believed that removing him would deal a devastating psychological blow to Japan's war effort. The decision climbed the chain of command. According to several historical accounts, President Franklin D. Roosevelt approved the mission after military leaders recommended the strike. The order was simple. Intercept the aircraft. Do not let Yamamoto escape. The operation received a fitting name. Operation Vengeance. An impossible mission. Approving the mission was only the beginning. Executing it seemed almost impossible. Yamamoto's flight would take place over the Solomon Islands. The nearest American fighter base was on Guadalcanal. The distance to the interception point, and back, was nearly 1,000 miles, about 1,600 kilometers. No ordinary fighter aircraft in the Pacific could fly that far. Most would run out of fuel long before reaching the target. American planners searched for a solution. One aircraft stood apart from the rest. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning. Unlike most fighters of the era, the P-38 featured twin engines and could carry external drop tanks, giving it exceptional range. It wasn't chosen because it was the fastest. It wasn't chosen because it was the most maneuverable. It was chosen because it was the only American fighter capable of completing the mission. Even then, the flight would push the aircraft, and its pilots, to their limits. The men who accepted the mission. The task fell to the 339th Fighter Squadron, part of the 347th Fighter Group. These weren't celebrities. They weren't famous aces. They were young American pilots fighting thousands of miles from home. Most were in their 20s. Many had never imagined they would one day be entrusted with one of the most sensitive missions of World War II. Before takeoff, they were told only what they needed to know. Their target was extremely important. Operational security was absolute. The fewer people who knew the source of the intelligence, the better. Flying without being seen. The success of Operation Vengeance depended on one thing above all else. Surprise. If Japanese radar, or even lookouts, detected the American fighters early, the mission would fail. So the pilots planned something extraordinary. They would fly just above the ocean. sometimes only 50 feet above the waves. At that altitude, enemy radar would struggle to detect them. But it came at a cost. There was almost no margin for error. Chapter 6: The flight that had to be perfect. Music softens. Clock ticking in the background. At 7:25 a.m. on April 18, 1943, the P-38s lifted off from Guadalcanal. Their engines roared into the morning sky. Then, they descended. Lower. Lower still. Until they skimmed just above the waves. Radio silence was mandatory. No unnecessary communication. No navigation beacons. No electronic guidance. Remember, this was 1943. No GPS. No satellites. No digital maps. Only paper charts. Compass headings. Stopwatches. Fuel calculations. And extraordinary skill. The navigation miracle. Perhaps the most remarkable part of Operation Vengeance wasn't the dogfight. It was the navigation. The American formation had to reach a tiny point in the vast Pacific Ocean. At exactly the same moment Yamamoto's aircraft arrived. Not 5 minutes early. Not 5 minutes late. Even a 1-minute error could allow the Japanese bombers to pass safely. The navigators calculated everything. Wind speed. Expected headwinds. Ground speed. Fuel consumption. Turning points. Every minute of the flight. The pilots trusted those calculations completely. For nearly 2 hours, they flew over open ocean. Nothing but endless blue water in every direction. No landmarks. No mountains. No roads. Only sea and sky. Time is running out. As the formation approached the interception area, fuel levels continued dropping. The pilots checked their gauges repeatedly. There would be enough fuel if everything went according to plan. But if the Japanese failed to appear, or if combat lasted too long, returning home might become impossible. Then, one pilot looked toward the horizon. Tiny black dots appeared in the distance. At first, barely visible. Then slowly, growing larger. The calculations had been correct. The Americans had arrived. At exactly the right place. At exactly the right time. Yamamoto's formation. Approaching from the north were 2 Japanese Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers. These aircraft carried Admiral Yamamoto and members of his staff. Flying alongside them were 6 Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters, serving as escorts. The Japanese crews believed this would be an ordinary inspection trip. There was no reason to suspect danger. After all, the route had been planned carefully. The schedule was secret. The timing was confidential. No enemy should have been waiting. Yet, high above the Pacific, American fighters were already diving toward them. The trap had been set. Split-second decisions. The American formation separated into 2 groups. One group would engage the escorting Zero fighters. The other would attack the bombers directly. There would be no second chance. If Yamamoto's aircraft escaped into the clouds, or reached nearby Japanese bases, the mission would fail. Engines thundered. Machine guns were armed. The distance closed rapidly. Within seconds, history was about to change forever. Chapter 7 At approximately 9:34 a.m., the silence over the Solomon Islands vanished. American P-38 Lightnings burst toward the Japanese formation at high speed. The escorting Mitsubishi Zeros reacted instantly. They banked sharply to intercept the attackers. Within seconds, the peaceful morning sky became a battlefield. Machine guns tore through the air. Tracer rounds streaked across the blue sky. Pilots twisted and climbed, each fighting for a split-second advantage. As planned, one group of American fighters engaged the Zeros. The second group pressed toward the true objective. The 2 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers. One of them carried Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. The race against time. The lead American pilots knew they had only moments. If the bombers reached the cover of nearby jungle or friendly airfields, the mission could fail. The P-38s accelerated, closing the distance. The Japanese escorts desperately tried to pull them away, but the Americans stayed focused. One Lightning lined up behind the lead bomber. Its guns erupted. .50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon fired together. The bomber shuddered. Smoke poured from one engine. The aircraft rolled, then plunged toward the dense jungle below. The second bomber also came under attack. Damaged and trailing smoke, it crashed near the coast after the crew attempted an emergency landing. The entire engagement lasted only a few minutes. The target had been destroyed, but the Americans had no way of confirming who had been aboard. They turned for the long flight home, still dangerously low on fuel. Chapter 8 The Search in the Jungle. For Japan, communication with Yamamoto's aircraft suddenly stopped. At first, officers assumed radio trouble. Then concern spread. Search teams were dispatched immediately. Soldiers, sailors, and local personnel pushed through thick jungle in the northern Solomon Islands. Hours later, they found the wreckage of the lead bomber. Nearby, beneath the trees, they discovered Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. Historical accounts describe him as having been thrown from the aircraft, still seated upright against a tree, his white gloves on, his sword at his side. Whether every detail of those early reports is perfectly accurate remains debated by historians, but there is no dispute about the outcome. Japan's most famous naval commander was dead. For the Imperial Japanese Navy, the loss was devastating. Chapter 9: Why Japan was so puzzled. The question spread quickly through Japan's military leadership. How could American fighters appear at exactly the right place? At exactly the right minute? In the middle of the Pacific Ocean? The itinerary had been classified. Only a limited number of officers knew the schedule. There were no public announcements. No newspaper reports. No visible leaks. Some officers feared there was a spy inside naval headquarters. Others suspected someone involved in planning had betrayed the mission. Still others believed American reconnaissance aircraft had somehow tracked Yamamoto's movements. None of these explanations fully fit the evidence. The interception had been too precise, too perfectly timed, too accurate. The true answer remained hidden. America had not relied on luck. America had relied on intelligence. The United States had quietly broken portions of Japan's naval communications system, yet revealing that success would have been incredibly dangerous. So American leaders kept the secret. Even many of the pilots involved did not know the full story at the time. Chapter 10: Who shot down Yamamoto? One mystery remains to this day. Who actually fired the decisive shots? Several American pilots believed they had destroyed Yamamoto's bomber. After the war, the question became the subject of extensive investigation. The pilot most commonly credited is Captain Thomas G. Lanford Jr. However, other historians argue that First Lieutenant Rex T. Barber was more likely responsible based on eyewitness accounts, flight paths, and damage analysis. Some researchers believe both pilots contributed to the attack. Decades later, the debate still continues. What has never been disputed is the mission's success. Operation Vengeance achieved its objective. Chapter 11: Did Yamamoto's death change the war? Would Japan have won had Yamamoto survived? Most historians say no. By 1943, America's industrial capacity had reached extraordinary levels. New aircraft carriers entered service at an astonishing pace. Thousands of aircraft rolled off production lines every month. American pilot training accelerated. Japan simply could not replace ships, aircraft, and experienced aviators at the same rate. Still, Yamamoto's death mattered. He had been one of Japan's most respected strategic thinkers. He understood America's industrial strength better than almost anyone else in Japanese leadership. His loss dealt a significant blow to morale. It also removed a commander whose experience and influence were difficult to replace. The Pacific War continued for more than 2 years. But the balance of power increasingly favored the United States. Chapter 12: The Greatest Lesson. Operation Vengeance demonstrated something revolutionary. Wars are not won only by bigger armies or more powerful ships. Sometimes, the decisive advantage comes from information. The men who intercepted Yamamoto were extraordinary pilots. But they could never have reached the right place, at the right time, without the invisible work of codebreakers, mathematicians, linguists, radio operators, analysts, people whose names remained classified for years after the war. Their battlefield was not the sky, it was intelligence. And in April 1943, their victory changed history. Conclusion. When people think of World War II, they often remember tanks rolling across Europe, carrier battles in the Pacific, or dramatic aerial dogfights. Yet one of the war's most remarkable victories began not with bullets, but with numbers. A single intercepted message, carefully decoded, quietly analyzed, and transformed into one of the most precise military operations ever conducted. For decades, much of the story remained hidden behind classified documents. Today, it stands as one of history's clearest reminders that intelligence, planning, and precision can shape the outcome of events just as surely as courage on the battlefield. Operation Vengeance was more than the hunt for one man. It was proof that in modern warfare, knowledge itself can become the most powerful weapon. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more incredible World War II stories based on real historical events, Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, we explore the untold operations, hidden intelligence battles, and extraordinary decisions that shaped history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary.